There's a lot of controversy on when mobile detailers should hire their first employee, and the true answer might shock all of you. If you don't know by now, my name is Dekker. I own a seven-figure detailing business across 3 states, and I've had over 100 people on my payroll in this last year alone. But here's the answer. When should you hire your first employee? Right freaking now. Obviously, there's a lot of factors to consider, but I think as long as you're not a entrepreneur, now is the perfect time to start hiring your first employee. The biggest reason people don't hire is simply because of risk. It could be that they don't have cash in the bank account, or it could be that they don't really know if they're going to stick with it. I've met a lot of people in the mobile detailing space who are afraid to make that commitment to somebody else simply because they can't make the commitment to themselves. They don't know if they're going to stick with it. They don't know if it's going to last. They don't know if they're going to be on to the next side hustle in 90 days. And to be honest with you, that's exactly why mobile detailing has a bad name.
Your make-believe business probably isn't
Power washing.
detailing.
It's always that bullshit.
But I don't make these videos for the hypothetical hustler types who are going to go out, clean 3 cars, and then go do crypto and go on to 90 other side hustles. I make these videos for people who are actually going to commit to detailing more than 90 days, go all in, and make this freaking happen. So let's just assume for the sake of the video, you're not going to half-ass this, and even if you don't have cash in the bank, you still will be able to pay them by the end of the month. Because if you're hiring right, an employee should make you more than they cost you. Let's play out both ways. One guy goes into work for himself. He runs his own ads, does the jobs himself, and has to knock doors just to try to drum up a little bit of business. And as soon as he finishes the job, he is back on the doors, back out hustling, trying to make his next dollar. He has no idea where the next dollar is coming from. If a customer calls, he's the one answering the phone. Customer complaint, he has to deal with all of their BS. If he gets sick or wants a vacation, dude, I hope you can do it without a paycheck because your business will not run without you. On the other hand, let me tell you my story. After I bought out my partner, I stripped the company all the way down to just me. I told myself that I was going to go all in on just chucking a truck. I was tired of taking risk. I was tired of getting into debt. I was tired of working the broken systems, and I was just going to go do everything myself. That lasted about 2 weeks. I tried the solo path I explained a second ago, but I learned very quickly I would much rather have half a watermelon than the whole grape. I didn't want to split my profit margin with all these employees. I'll tell you right now, I'm only taking home about 13% of our revenue. And I have made more money in the last month than I did our first entire 6 months in business. So after 2 weeks of running nonstop just to keep my income, I hired a technician. See, here's the deal. I came from a sales background. I had 4 years of experience and I was pretty dang good at it. So if I was closing 5 figures a day, every second that I was doing something cheaper was hurting myself and hurting the business. Here's how I think about it. If I'm doing sales, I'm bringing in over $2,000 an hour. I pay my technicians about $25 an hour. So if I had a machine that I gave it $25 and it freed up my time to make $2,000, I'm making that trade every freaking day. And this gave me the freedom to focus on the highest leverage skill that was going to make me the most money. I didn't have to worry about admin. I didn't have to worry about picking up the phone. I didn't have to worry about customer complaints or any of the manual labor of actually doing the job out in the sun. I could focus on what I was good at and what actually brought in money. And slowly I was able to grow from a technician to a sales rep to a trainer to a manager to a regional manager to an actual owner who doesn't have to be involved in the day-to-day of the business. Every step I took, my margin got smaller, but I bought back more of my time to go do more of the stuff. Again, when you're a solo guy, you take home 90%, but you're only making 10 grand a month. When you hire a couple employees, when you hire a technician, your margin very quickly goes from 90% to about 60%. But you're still doing all the sales and there's a lot of time involved. Right now, like I said, I take home 13%. But between 3 offices, we're bringing in multiple $1 million per office per year. And again, I'd rather have a little nibble of a watermelon than the entire little grape. Now, I want to preface the 2 biggest mistakes that I made when hiring people that cost me over 14 employees in only 2 weeks. The first mistake I made was over-promising employees, and I learned the scary truth about title inflation. When I was just starting, I knew that I could not compete with benefits or any of the other things that these big old billion-dollar corporations throw at people, and so a lot of us small business owners fall into the trap of just over-promising. And I don't believe that this is ill-intentioned at all. We genuinely mean it when we offer it. But at the same time, if the company doesn't grow as fast as you want it to, if we don't hit our targets, if we don't do as well as we think we're going to, and between you and me, as owners, we think we're going to do better than we are. It's the entrepreneur's curse. We end up writing a check that we just can't cash. But last January, I hired a small sales team. They started in on a 1-month trial little contract, and after that, they re-signed a 5-year extension, which was awesome. It had a growth path, it brought up equity, it brought up what their position looks like as the company goes from 1 to 3 to 10 offices. It brought up all of that. The only problem was they didn't grow as fast as I thought we were going to. Again, as the owner, we believe that we are going to do big, crazy stuff. The problem is anyone who's not an owner is going to be slightly slower than you are. If I'm growing at 100%, my GM is going to grow at 90%. My trainer is going to grow at 80%. And so when I pass on my job to the next person, they're going to do it a little slower. They're going to do it a little bit less efficient. And it's going to take longer to get to where we want to be. And even then, there might be a time where your employee, where they want to be, is not the same place that you want them to be. And that is a hard conversation to have. Because that promise of leadership that I gave to them is the exact same reason that only 4 months later, every single one of them was either fired or quit. In the door-to-door sales world, part of leadership is building your team and recruiting. And so when these guys came in, they were all sales reps. They were entry-level guys. And I pitched them on, hey, as we get bigger, we need more employees. We get more employees. We need you to train them, manage them, recruit them. The problem was these sales reps, they loved the training side of things. They loved the managing side of things. They loved the promotion. They loved their salary. They loved the title and the ego that they get to wear the gold manager shirt and not the black employee shirt. But they never hired any other sales reps. And so I ended up with this upside down pyramid where I had 6 managers and 1 employee. Obviously, I had a couple people from Instagram come in and just want to come out on a blitz purely because they followed me online. But this actually caused bigger problems because now they had gotten a taste of leadership. They had gotten a taste of that ego, that promotion, and the validation of, oh, this is what life is supposed to be like. And then once their blitzes end, they couldn't go back into, oh, I'm a sales rep. I am the rep. And they never hired a team, and so they were stuck where they were. They were promised to be managers, but they never did these things. They never did the things that made them managers. They wanted the manager's title, the manager's pay, and the day-to-day tasks of an entry-level sales rep. And between you and me, a sales manager with a team of 20 guys brings in a lot more money than 1 guy. The same way that an office of 20 technicians normally brings in more money than the solo guy. Yeah, you smell what I'm stepping in? And while I could go ahead and get emotional on these people, breaking their contract and leaving early, at the end of the day, I'm a capitalist to a fault. I believe that everything that happens to me, whether good or bad, is on me. I believe that if you're going to own your wins, you also got to own your losses. And so there are things that I did that I realized that I did that caused them to leave, caused them to perform less than I expected, caused them to, not hit their quotas and therefore get fired, caused them to not be happy and get emotional and end up quitting. And I think it all stemmed from overpromising in the interview. Everybody was hyped. Everybody loves their job on the first day. On their 90th day, it gets a little tougher. And so on the first day, when everything was high, emotions were high, everybody was feeling great, they were told about an equity track. They were told about growing into the business. They were told about leadership, management. All of these things were promised to them, not 4,000 years ago, but still promised. And they didn't end up having that. They felt like I had overpromised, sold them on it, and then proceeded to under-deliver on them. When in reality, I should have pushed on how hard it is to recruit, that if they wanted to be managers, they needed people to manage. Can't be a manager with no employees under you. That's another thing, little tangent. I hate when people do like a solo, or maybe they have 1 employee and they're like, oh, I'm a CEO. Like, dude, you're not a CEO, you have 1 employee. Come on, what are we doing? But that's kind of what happens with these guys is they'll start a solo and they're the CEO or the owner or some, Grand Chancellor of DN Detailing. Yeah, I'm Grand Chancellor Supreme, good to meet you. But when you're an independent guy, you're not a CEO, you're not even a manager, you're a technician. You are the only person there. If you start the pyramid from the bottom, there's nowhere to go but down. You have to start from the bottom and climb up. So when you start off, you are a technician. After you hire a couple people, you could be a trainer, you could be an operations manager. If you have like 3 or 4 trucks going, you got 3 or 4 employees, then you step into that kind of manager shoes. And what I see a lot of these guys do is they go in as the CEO and their first hire goes, oh, you're a CEO? I need to be one step below you. I'll be the manager. And so now you have a CEO and a manager and no technicians, no salespeople, no admin, no assistant. You just have a CEO and a manager. You see how this is kind of backwards, right? My rule of thumb for this is if I were to put this experience on a resume, if my business went under tomorrow, if I was looking for another job with the exact same day-to-day as mine right now, what would I put on a resume? If I put CEO and go apply for the CEO of O'Reilly's Auto Parts, I would get laughed out of the door. If I put regional director over the greater Northwestern or something like that, regional director over the greater Northwestern of the United States, that's actually what I do. I manage every branch in my company from Texas to Utah to Nevada, the greater Northwest. I'm not a CEO. I'm a regional manager. Pretty much what it is. A lot of you solo guys will come out here and say, oh, I'm a CEO, when really your qualifications is an entry-level technician. If you're an operations manager and you're running things on the sales side, you're handling routing, you're handling keeping your team motivated, training people, expanding, and everything that you need to do in your office, you're not a CEO. You're a general manager or maybe a branch manager. If you go apply for my business, for example, and you say, oh, I was the owner of my own thing, I would much rather you say, hey, I led a team of 4 guys. That is a small manager. That's a manager doing about $500,000 a year, which is nothing to be embarrassed about at all. When you tell me you're the owner of your own conglomerate, I'm going to laugh you out because you're inflating your own title. You're going to continue to do that here. And when you realize that the day-to-day of your owner job or CEO job is the exact same as our entry-level technicians, you're not going to like it because you're going to be on the same floor, same level playing field as everybody else. Now, the second risk you have to take when hiring your first couple employees, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I call it the shedding of belief. So if I'm the owner, no one will ever believe in the business more than me. Let's put this at 110% because I'm freaking awesome. Below that, you have a general manager of your location. Your GM is going to believe just about as much as you, but they're not going to be as bought into the vision as you are specifically because they are a step below you. If they believe more than you, they would start their own business and you would be broke under a bridge, crying and begging for money. They will believe slightly less than you. So my general managers at the moment, if I were to guesstimate, I would say one of them is in the 85 range, one of them is around 95, and the other one also probably 90 to 95-ish. But it goes a step further than that. As you add more levels to the business, below my GM is our trainers. If our GM is at an 85, our trainer cannot be more than an 85. Otherwise, they would not want to work for this person. They would want to open their own branch. And that's an awkward conversation for me to have. So GMs, make sure you're keeping your stuff together. Booyah. So just to use Las Vegas, for example, because that's where I was most recently, my general manager is probably sitting around at 95%. And my trainer, Bert, you're awesome. We just promoted him pretty recently. His energy is awesome. He's probably right there at about 90%. Which means every single person who comes in and trains directly under Bert, they're getting that 90% rubbing off on them. They're going to have that contagious of the 90%. And so most of my technicians, I'd say the absolute lowest one is sitting at like a 70% belief in the company. I have a very strong team of people who are bought in, love the vision, love it short-term and long-term, and they're here to freaking play. Now I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes I made last February. So I had someone he came in as a sales rep and his energy was awesome. He was very bought in, very dedicated, hard worker, but he just wasn't putting up the numbers, to be honest. He just was not hitting his quotas, he was not hitting his goals, and his paycheck reflected that. In a commission-only job, if you don't hit your quotas, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. And after he took out 2 personal loans from me, I kind of told him, I was like, hey, this probably isn't going to work out. But I love your energy, I love your enthusiasm. Let's move you to the technician side. Now, if you don't know this about salespeople by now, let me tell you. We have one of the biggest egos in the world. Salespeople love themselves. They think that they are worth more than everybody because that's just what the way salespeople are. Let's be honest, salespeople think that they are above Jesus. And so when I told this guy, hey, you're going from sales rep to entry level technician, he was not very happy. And rather than just letting him go, I, made the mistake of negotiating too much, and I promoted him to like a shift lead trainer position. You can kind of imagine where this is. Let's put this guy's energy at like a 25-ish about being on the truck at all. To be honest, it was the only way that I could get him to, load up a truck is by giving him a fancy title of trainer. During his time before we ended up letting him go, he trained 3 people. 2 of them lasted less than a week. 1 of them lasted about a month and a half before we let him go. And it all came down to their first impression of the business. One of my favorite analogies is Chick-fil-A. Imagine you come in, it's your first day at Chick-fil-A, and during your onboarding or orientation, they're all like, oh, hey, around here, we say my pleasure. We don't say thank you, we say my pleasure. And you're sitting here like, well, that's kind of stupid. Like, that seems corny. Why do I have to say that? I'm just going to say, you're welcome. And then your first day on the floor, if everybody around you, anytime, no problem, you're welcome. You're like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. I don't want to do it, and I don't have to, so I'm not going to. You're welcome. Peace out. Have a good one. Whatever. However, if you go out there and your trainer, my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. Your coworkers around you, my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. Everyone's saying my pleasure. It starts to rub off on you and you realize, oh, this is actually a standard that they believe in, that they set, that they enforce. Everybody says my pleasure. Now it's not corny. Now it's just part of my job. Your trainers the exact same way. On our video course, we go through and we tell people, hey, make sure we're hitting the door jams. Hey, efficiency matters. Hey, this is why sales works. This is how we do the selling process. We say these words because they work. Every single one of my technicians use the exact same script to turn our one-time clients into recurring clients. Exact same script. Hey, Mr. Customer, I just wrapped up your car. I did want to point out, I saw this little scratch over here. While I'm here, we actually do scratch removal. It's $550. Do you want me to go ahead and take care of that real quick? It'll be about 2 hours. Perfect. Cool. Sign here. And we just make $500. And our technician off of that made like 120, which is sweet. Everybody does things the exact same way because it works. Now, this trainer was not very happy, of course, given the situation. And so his efficiency was awful. He took 7 hours on a 2-hour job. We had 3 people either cancel or reschedule because of that. And then about 2 months later, I found out that he actually took his trainee to his house and just left him on the couch so he could take a nap for 2 hours. Or maybe he was arguing with his girlfriend. I don't really know. I don't really care about the details. All I care is he was not on the truck, not doing his jobs. And 3 jobs at $250 a piece, he's costing me $800 some odd dollars. That's not good for me. And so the reason I had issues with that employee is his first impression of the business was, oh, I don't have to respect him. Efficiency doesn't matter. Sales doesn't matter. The customers don't matter. Quality doesn't matter. Nothing matters. We're just hanging out and getting paid to take a nap on Dekker. Hell yeah. Easy ass job. And then when that was his first impression, that was his baseline. So every time I told him to be more efficient, every time I told him to work on sales, every time I told him to do a good job, because we were getting customer complaints, he wrote it off as bullshit. But that taught me this rule very quickly, that if your trainer doesn't believe in the vision like you do, then every single employee, their first impression is going to suck. Their first impression is going to be, oh, who cares about this job? I'm already taking other interviews. I'm already doing all this other stuff. And they're just not going to perform well. And luckily, we were able to catch this after 3 reps, because if we had 20 people come in, train with that, and we had every single employee leaving after a month, alarm bells would be ringing. And so if you set the tone of negativity and frustration, it doesn't matter how good you are at your job. It doesn't matter how much that I, as the CEO or the manager or the GM or anybody else around them tells you how awesome the job is. If your first impression, if you're surrounded by negativity, you're surrounded by people, oh, I don't like my job. I'm just here for a paycheck. I don't enjoy any of this. If you're surrounded by that negativity, you're not going to perform well. And that's why we do pay for performance. That's why we do incentives. That's why we do bonus-based pay. Our base pay, if your efficiency sucks, you don't make a whole lot of money. My best technician last month made over 2.5 times what our worst guy made, because he had the most sales, most Google reviews. He did jobs the quickest. He was able to do the most jobs, because if you do a 10-hour route in an 8-hour day, you're bringing in 10 hours worth of revenue in 8 hours. You make me more money, you make more money. If you guys want to see more about how I pay my employees specifically, go ahead and check that out because it is the best way to get rid of these time wasters, these lazy people who are just trying to skate by. That's not what we're about here. We're hiring the best freaking guys. Come on. Now, this last piece of advice was taught to me by one of my mentors, Dan Martell. So if you haven't seen his book, if you haven't read it, go check it out. But he talks about what tasks you should delegate to your first hire. So remember, hiring somebody is literally no different than just buying back your time. You are purchasing the time you spend on this low leverage activity so that you have the time available to spend on a higher leverage activity. Like we said earlier, if I make $2,000 an hour in sales, if I make $10,000 an hour in adjusting the script and training sales reps, and I make $25 an hour doing the jobs, obviously there's tiers, there's levels to this shit. And so if my skills are too valuable to be sitting in a truck all day, doing jobs, doing the manual labor with no growth, and just kind of doing the do. So the first step to determine what tasks you're going to delegate to your first hire is a time audit. So you're going to spend about 2 weeks and just set a timer on your phone, on your watch. Every 15 minutes, I want it to ding, and you just write down what you did. This could be, oh, I checked my email. I was on the phone with Bob. If you're teching for, like, let's say you're at the job for an hour and a half, 2 hours, you can just write down on a job, on a job, on a job, on a job. And you can take a look at your calendar by the end of the second week. There's really nothing that I do less frequently than every other week, outside of maybe payroll, I guess. There's a couple things I do once a month, but just about everything in my calendar I do on a weekly, if not every other week basis. Now, before we move on to the next step, we are going to go through every single task we do and see if there's anything that we can just remove completely. This is stuff like organizing my desk, scrolling TikTok, any time like that that you spend that you don't even think about until you have to write it down. Oh, I was between jobs, somebody rescheduled, so I had an hour to kill, so I played Clash Royale. Well, that's an hour of your time you could have been knocking doors, you could have been calling former clients, you could have been doing anything that produces more revenue to the business than playing on your phone. So that's step one, is go through and remove anything that is not 110% necessary to the business. If it is not making you money or absolutely necessary to keep the lights on, cut it. Now, the next task, you're going to separate every item in your calendar into 4 quadrants. On your left-hand side, you have stuff that is expensive to replace and stuff that is cheap to replace. On the bottom, you have stuff that you enjoy doing and stuff that just absolutely sucks the life out of you. You hate doing it. And now you have your 4 quadrants. You have one of stuff that you delegate. This is stuff that is cheap to replace. I can have someone check my email. I can have someone answer the phone. I can have someone do all of these cheap tasks as an admin employee or an EA for like 3 or 4 grand a month and free up my time to go make 3 or 4 grand an hour. Now, the next 2 sections are either cheap to replace, but you just enjoy it, and that's your passion section, or it could be something that you don't really enjoy doing, but it's really expensive to replace. For a lot of people, that is sales. Going on the doors is honestly one of the hardest things most people have to do. I was very blessed that I came from that background, so I didn't realize how hard the stuff I was doing actually was until I started training people with absolutely no experience, no background, people who were former technicians even, going in and realizing, oh damn, it's kind of hard. And so this is things that are expensive to replace. Salespeople are expensive. They take like 30% commission right off the bat, 35 if they're awesome. And yeah, expensive to replace. And whether you enjoy doing it or not, you can't afford it at the early stages. And then finally, we have the golden box. This is your top right. This is stuff that is expensive to replace, but you don't have to worry about that because you love doing it. For me, this was sales for the longest time. Right now, it's training, it's building the SOPs, it's doing this stuff for y'all right here. Hiring someone to go through, create training videos for every single task in the business. Having someone go out and do outreach to find more franchisees, to find more people to come test our stuff and make sure it's as awesome as we say it is, because it's pretty freaking awesome. All of this time is pretty hard to replace. I work some long hours. However, I enjoy it. I enjoy working with my clients. I enjoy seeing the results. I enjoy seeing someone go from, $1,000 a week to 10 grand a week. I enjoy seeing that transformation. And so yeah, I don't plan on delegating this anytime soon. Y'all are stuck with me, so you might as well go subscribe while you're here. So my challenge to you before hiring your first employee is one, are you in? If you're a entrepreneur, then I don't want you watching any more of my stuff. If you're actually in it to win it, go start posting that ad right now as soon as you get off this video. And two, do you have enough stuff for them to do? Is there enough time after you go through a time audit in those 3 replaceable boxes? Is there enough on your calendar that you can delegate to another employee? And I'll ask a side question with that. If you don't have 40 hours of technician work that someone can take on, if you had 25 extra hours in the week to work on sales, work on marketing, and bring in clients, do you think you can make 40 hours? If so, go ahead and subscribe. Comment your revenue last month. Come back in 30 days. Let's see how much you blew it out of the water. I make content for mobile detailers trying to actually scale their business and not just make a quick buck. If that's you, go subscribe. See you next time. Peace.